My next guest is probably the most popular person in the city of Huntington, West Virginia. So popular they named the town after him. Please welcome Collis P. Huntington. Mr. Huntington, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure, my pleasure. Perhaps you could keep a close eye on those. There are thieves and scallywags everywhere.
Mr. Huntington, this is hippie.
Hello, Mr. Huntington. How are you?
I'm fine, fine.
Good.
You are what's called a sidekick, right?
Yes, sir. That's my official title.
I've not had the pleasure of seeing the show before.
Not that many people have, so you are
Not really a pleasure at all.
you're doing fine. So, Mr. Huntington, thank you for coming on the show.
It is a pleasure.
Yeah.
It is a pleasure.
So, this is your city behind us here. What do you think?
I think it's a great place. What do you think of the name?
The name?
I think it's wonderful. Isn't Huntington
okay,
a
I
wonderful
guess.
name for a town?
Barboursville could have been better, but Huntington is good. Huntington.
Or like Amazing Land.
Barbersville is simply another whistle stop on the C&O.
So how did Huntington become what it is today? What is the history that you can provide our viewers with?
Well, how long do you have here? It wouldn't
Well, you
be
saw
something that I could...
the Captain Cat, so we have plenty of time.
Yes, and I'm really, really pleased to be in a position of following such a stellar act, I have to tell you. Seriously, let me share a little history with you. I was in my office. This would have been about 1870. I was called on by a delegation from the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway. They wanted me to buy a controlling interest in their railway. It had long been the dream of people to link the James River with the Ohio River. At first, the thought had been to do it with a series of canals, and when that didn't prove feasible, they built the James and Kanawha Turnpike, a road of sorts that hardly deserves the name. With the coming of railroads, it was an obvious place to build one, and a start was made. But the Civil War came along.
The best war in the nation's history.
Well,
sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure there are many people who would agree with that, but marauding troops, Confederate and Union alike, tore up the track, dynamited the locomotives, burned the rolling stock. The result was that the railroad, the C&O, was to all intents and purposes bankrupt. And this was the railroad that these individuals wanted me to buy. I told them no thank you. That it had always been my rule to only invest in something where I saw a pretty good chance at making a profit. I didn't see such a chance in this regard.
Well, we're in this show, but go ahead.
Yeah, but by the way, what am I being paid for this appearance? Am I getting union scale?
Union scale,
yeah.
1900 union scale, yeah.
Okay, all right. These were extraordinarily persistent gentlemen, though. They kept after me, and they kept after me. And eventually I relented. It wasn't a great deal of money. And so I knew that if the C&O was to survive, if the C&O was to ever make a profit, that the tracks had to be laid as quickly as possible across what was then the new state of West Virginia. So in keeping with some other gentlemen, we set out by horseback to personally inspect the proposed right-of-way. And eventually we did get all the way across the state, and we came to the Ohio River in a little village called Guyandotte. You familiar with Guyandotte?
I'm very familiar with Guyandotte, right next to Barboursville.
Not exactly, but close. Now, I should tell you that at this point, there was a great epidemic up and down the stretch of the Ohio Valley of what might be called railroad fever. It's not the kind of malady that you'll find in a medical dictionary. It was the anticipation that people felt when they thought the railroad was coming to their town. Because with the railroad would come jobs and prosperity. So the people there in Guyandotte had a particularly virulent dose of railroad fever. They were sure their little town was going to be the western terminus of the C&O Railway. Well, a strange thing happened there, and I've often studied about it. Not sure I can explain it, but as I indicated, we were traveling by horseback, and I'm sure you travel by horseback a lot, and
yeah,
you know
I
it's
go,
mighty thirsty
I go horseback every night.
And arrived there in the little village, and we had quite a thirst that we'd worked up. We decided that we'd like a bit of liquid refreshment, perhaps a glass of sarsaparilla, maybe something a little stronger if we could find it. We spied a likely boarding house where we could get a drink, and we tied our horses up at the hitching rack outside, adjourned inside.
Mr. Huntington, wake up. No, I thought you dozed off on us there for a second.
I do doze off occasionally. That was not one of them.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
That was
I
a
do that all the
dramatic.
time, too.
That was a dramatic pause.
Oh.
But you get to be my age, you'll drift off occasionally too. What happened then was very strange. My horse, instead of staying out in the dirt street there where a good, honest, self-respecting horse would be expected to stay, somehow managed to reverse his position so that he was between the hitching rack. Am I keeping you up?
Not at all. Not at all. I'm very
I thought that was a
interested.
yawn.
No.
The horse got between the hitching rack and the steps, and actually clambered up on the steps. And there it did what horses do. Would not be a...
The horse pooped.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
That's the long and short of it,
Yeah.
yes. And that would not have been a problem out in the pasture, but it made a considerable mess right there on the steps. And as it happened, the mayor of this little burg would come along right at that very time, took a look at what had happened, didn't like it, made his way into the boarding house, his careful way, I presume, and he angrily demanded to know, whose horse is that outside? Well, I told him it was mine. He fined me $5. I paid him. Gave him a $5 gold piece right there on the spot. And you know, the next day, the people in Guyandotte were very disappointed to learn that their little city wasn't going to be the western terminus of the C&O Railway.
All because of the horse on the porch.
Well, actually, there are those who say
Mr.
that.
Huntington, thank you for coming on this show. We really appreciate you being there. I'm sorry about the 1937 flood, by the way.
The 37 flood?
We'll be right back.